if we go to your PhD thesis, again, I think there's this perhaps a dimension that you're saying maybe you haven't recognized it yourself, but me having gone quickly through a big number of your writings. So when it comes to your PhD thesis, now you have turned your attention to another field in Islam. So whereas in the case of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, I think it's a lot more of a historical analysis. Now you have completely gone into the world of hadith, the world of narration and the tradition. And you decide to look specifically at du'a and ziyarah. And you are able to show that, especially, let's say, in the world of Shi'ism, the du'a and the ziyarah start playing a role of creating the identity of that community. And it becomes a part and parcel of who they are for whatever is to come. So that's kind of my, skimming through. That's what I got from it.
Yeah.
And once again, how did you get involved in that topic? What got you to, this is not a murder mystery anymore.
No, it's not.
That's one. And two, I think here, I was thinking about this because, as an academic myself, sometimes we look at these topics from a very academic lens.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking you a very personal question. Do you feel that as a result of this in-depth, extensive academic study about a topic like du'a and ziyarah, do you feel that you have a renewed appreciation of the role in your life or your spirituality, or is it worth it? Does it give that kind of benefit to you? Besides or beyond or above the academic. The academic is of course there.
The intellectual side, yeah.
So this is more the pragmatic and the spiritual. So how did you get involved into this topic? First of all, am I even hitting it again on the head? Am I right in the way I'm trying to analyze what you tried to do? And how did you get involved in this? And practical ramifications into your life.
So how I got involved in it, I love du'a and I love ziyarah. The subjects that I choose are those that I find personally fulfilling, spiritually. The love of the Ahlul Bayt, and one of the things that led me to Islam to begin with was the death of Sayyidah Zahra, first of all. So I was personally invested in wanting to know about this, right? Spiritually invested, not just intellectually invested. Very much theologically and spiritually invested. However, when I'm writing, of course, I'm not writing from that perspective. I'm writing from an academic perspective, while allowing the voices of my subjects to speak for themselves.
And you have a wonderful academic pen, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I try to allow them to speak for themselves. And that's what I've done with the du'a and ziyarah subject, right? What I've looked at, I said, look, this is something which is so ubiquitous. Du'a and ziyarah are two sides of the same coin. They're essentially, there's tashayyu and there's du'a and ziyarah. Du'a and ziyarah and tashayyu. It's like they're the same thing, essentially, right? And it's du'a kumail and ziyarah ashura. Or whatever, any other ziyarat that we recite. It's so ubiquitous. But what I wanted to know is, okay, this is how it is today. But how did we get here?
Once again.
Exactly, right?
Yes.
How did we get here? Again, I want to look at the intellectual history, the intellectual legacy. As Eaton Kohlberg told me once, Dr. Kohlberg, in an email, which is a very nice exchange I had with him. He's the famous professor in Israel, right? The famous scholar of Shiism, Eaton Kohlberg. He told me once, he said that you would see that it has a very, he didn't use the word rich, pristine legacy. Very remarkable legacy.
In reference to du'a and ziyarah specifically, the liturgy, yes.
But he said, I never really had a chance to look deep into it. You're one of the first people to do it. And this is what Dr. Lawson, my supervisor, told me as well, that since Ane Qurban 50 years ago, no one's really opened this door.
Right.
Since Qurban on Islam Iranian, and since in his other works where he just kind of alludes to this subject, Padwick a little bit, mostly from a Sunni perspective, looking at the works of Ghazali and others, or the other ahzab and things like this. So I was like, one, it's unexplored. Two, it's something so spiritually meaningful to me. It brings me to tears. So it's something I'm personally attached to. Intellectually, it's an area which is relatively unexplored, very much relatively, such that I had to create my own methodology to study this. And number three, it's also a hot button topic. Because these days, we live in an era in which a lot of people, as I mentioned, have a lot of opinions about things that they don't know about, right? Most things that are said are very vacuous, right? Yeah. They're very vacuous.
Yeah, not much scholarship.
There's not much scholarship on this. And when I came across, people like Sayyid Muhammad Sin Jalali, who was a student of Marashi Najafi, a student of Agha Zurk, and I had an opportunity to meet with them, and Sayyid Sistani, Allah Maqama, who guided the project at the very beginning, Samahata Sayyid al-Marja al-A'la. He hit on something very important in about a 40-minute conversation that we had just on this mas'ala only, mas'ala wahid, which is the history of Du'a and Ziyarah.
Yes.
When he found out I had chosen the subject, he turned to me, and there's a gathering of people, must be like 50, 60 people in the room, and he just forgot that they were there. And he just entered a mubahatha, like Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, beginning talk, and imagine who's talking to you about what, right? It's so like your hands are shaking, right? And that was my first interaction with him, right? Many years ago. I mean, because this project has been 8, 9 years, 10 years in the making. Yeah. And he begins and he says, turns to me, it's him and Sheikh Muslim Dawadi, but especially Sayyid Ali Sistani at Manjal A'la. He said to me, what a subject. We don't have anything on it, not even in Arabic. Hatta fil Arabi. There's just some safahat here and there, some awraq here, hunna wa hunak. There's nothing actually concrete since Abu Zurk or Sheikh al-Amini, Sahib al-Ghadir. So he said, very good subject. And he was so excited. And when he was excited, I became even more excited. I just dived into the sources and said, I am dedicating the next, 8, 9 years that I can to be completely absolved in learning about the historical trajectory of this literature. Where did it begin? How did it begin? Who were the progenitors of this tradition? What do we know about this? Where did it come from? What do we know about the manuscripts? How did the ulama interact with it? What was their experience with it? Was it more cultural? Was it more religious? Was it an intellectual enterprise? Was it more just a parochial enterprise? And the answer is, it is not parochial at all, but it finds itself at the very center of Shi'i intellectual life, right? And it becomes a nexus and meeting point of the general population and the scholars. And one of the few things that they all share, which is Du'a and Ziyarah, right? And thus it has such a multitude of levels with regards to its meaning and its experience, right? You have the level of Sheikh Tusi, and Sheikh al-Mufid, and Sheikh al-Saduq, and Alam al-Hilli, who are reading the same supplications, and then you have people like myself, who are reading that supplication with a very different understanding than Alam al-Hilli. But when do the scholars and the people read from the same book? This is an example. And that's why it's also very important, because it gives us an insight into not only the intellectual history, but the social cultural history of Tashayyu. And it's unique for that reason, I think. At least that's what I try to express, that it is unique. I hope I explained myself.
Absolutely. You did.